Higher Universe Pictures.
Welcome to the Paranormal Phenomena podcast with Brandon Reines and Elizabeth Chamberlain.
I'm Brandon Reines.
And I'm Elizabeth Chamberlain.
Welcome to the Paranormal Phenomena podcast, where we talk about ghosts, aliens, and the unexplained. On today's episode, we speak with paranormal expert Morgan Knudsen about the Beast of Bray Road.
If you like our podcast, be sure to subscribe, and we'd love it if you could like, share, and comment on our show. Those likes go a long way in helping us reach a wider audience, and we really appreciate that.
Morgan, welcome back yet again. It's great to have you on.
Always. I'm always stoked to be here with you guys, and tonight is I think it's going to be awesome. So I'm digging it.
Yeah, I like cryptids in general, and we actually had your buddy Chad Lewis on the show a while back, and he there's so many. I went through his website, and there was so many of them I wanted to talk about, but we can't talk about 100 of them in one show, so I had to kind of just pick the top three, and we didn't get into as much detail as I wanted, so we hope to have him back on soon. But actually, you brought up on the last show we recorded, the Beast of Bray Road. It was one of my favorites.
Yeah, it's one of my favorites too, and I find that case. I find Wisconsin in general incredibly fascinating, but the Dogman, what I guess most people would call legends, but the Dogman phenomenon, I think is one of the most fascinating and mysterious cryptid cases that we can talk about. So
Definitely.
it's great.
Bigfoot's had his day. Now it's the age of the Beast of Bray Road. The dog.
Yeah, I think so.
All right, Elizabeth, you want to launch into our questions?
I would love to, because I know next to nothing about this. Based on what you guys are showing, you know a lot more than me. So what is the Beast of Bray Road?
So this is, as I say, one of the most interesting topics, I think, because the Beast of Bray Road was the sighting of what most people would consider like a werewolf-looking creature along about a 2-mile stretch of country road in Wisconsin, in Walworth County, called Bray Road. And it's mainly a rural farming community. There's these patches of dense woods coupled with prairie and farmland and so on and so forth up this road. And the first sighting was in 1936 and ended up becoming a lot more talked about, more popular in the 70s and 80s, when there was an encounter by a young woman who was basically a single mom, and she was coming home from work, young woman. She's driving home, and she sees what looks like an animal sort of off to the road shoulder, and it's sitting there looking like it's eating roadkill. And so she couldn't quite make out what she was seeing. It's late at night. She turned her headlights on, and what she was looking at scared the living hell out of her. What she described was this creature basically on its knees with actual knees, holding the roadkill in its paws, hands, whatever, with elbows like this, eating. And it turned and looked at the car, and she said it looked like a wolf. It had a canid head, really large, but between 6 to 7 feet, built, and it was sitting there eating this roadkill. And when it saw her, it let out with this growl. And interestingly enough, at the same time, her car quit working. So it was like there was this EMP pulse or electromagnetic pulse that killed the car. She got the car going again. It turned back over, and she ended up just speeding off to her mom's place, which was close by. And so it started with this phenomenon with when she reported it, and when she went to the animal control office to say, I don't know what was on the side of the road, I don't know what this was, but oh my God. What surprised her was that the animal control officer pulled out a file folder with the term werewolf on the top of it. And she realized that she was not the only one who had seen this thing. It was common enough that animal control knew about it, and were documenting cases. So, they don't think it's something like a werewolf. They don't know what it is, but it's seen all within Walworth County, and most notably on Bray Road.
Has anyone ever been injured or killed by this thing?
There's been a lot of attacks. There was a rash of animal mutilations for a long time, livestock, things like that. And that was what really tipped farmers off that something was really weird, because they were noticing all of these animal mutilations. As far as I know, I've never heard of anybody physically attacked. There's definitely been assaults on vehicles. People have reported, stopping their car to look at it and things like this, and it's gone after their car. Claw marks in the doors and stuff like that as they've gotten away. But as far as I know, I don't know of any direct reports of them getting physically injured. It seems like with a lot of the Dogman cases, not just the Beast of Bray Road, but some of the others, that the Dogman will pursue for a certain amount of time or a certain distance and then break off the chase. So there's been quite a number of what people feel are close calls, but nothing to turn around and say, look, oh my God, this thing bit me or something like that.
It seems almost like they kind of want to keep people away from them rather than hunt them or eat them. So they'll chase them away, but it seems like they want to be left alone. Even the one you were describing, he kind of just growled, probably trying to frighten her so she'll get out of there. But it doesn't seem like they're actually here to hunt humans or anything or cause any sort of harm like that.
No, it doesn't. And what's interesting, and what I found really interesting when I started delving into this, because this phenomenon is global. We can look back throughout history with these dogman type creatures popping up in different areas, including right here in Alberta. There's been known to be a number of sightings. And what's interesting about that is the fact that they seem to be focused around First Nations burial grounds. So everything from like effigy mounds to burial mounds, things like that. And there's a theory that it could be that they are actually protecting certain pieces of property or territory, and that they're put there on purpose. Because every single case, like you were saying, is these situations where somebody will get chased off, growled at, told to go away, that sort of energetic, get out of my territory. But nobody's ever really been attacked, and they will break off the chase. So it's a theory that it's territorial.
Is there any experiences in which have been positive then, or is it just only ever negative experiences?
I've never heard of one to be specifically positive. The people that run into it tend to tell people, do not go looking for this thing. It's really frightening for people. They don't seem to be particularly friendly. I'm working a case actually in Alberta right now, where there was a number of sightings of one on a piece of property, which is now being looked at as a burial ground. And the same situation with my clients, where but the encounters that they had weren't necessarily bad in any way, but they were really frightening, and the creatures just seemed to be very adamant about telling them, you just get away, back off.
So what is it about Wisconsin? I know Chad Lewis is actually from Wisconsin,
Yeah.
and it seems like there's a lot of this around. Is that just a coincidence that it's from around there? You said it's all over the world. Is Wisconsin a hotbed for this kind of activity?
I think Wisconsin got the attention specifically with Bray Road because of the reporter Linda Godfrey. She was the first to really put a name to the phenomenon back during the time when Lori Andresi, the girl that had seen the beast eating the roadkill, when she made that report, Lori was one of the first people that Linda spoke with, who turned around and said, you know what, you're allowed to publish my story. So at the time, Linda Godfrey, she was a kind of a rookie reporter, just getting into storytelling and the business and the media, and she was mainly a cartoonist. And when she got a hold of this story, she kind of laughed. She thought it was weird and quirky, and then she started asking around the town of Elkhorn, and she realized this wasn't a joke. There was people who had seen it. Most people did not want to come forward at all. A lot of them were very embarrassed about their sightings. But Lori and Tracy decided that it was okay to publish it. So when Linda Godfrey put this in the local paper, she made a little comic that has now become very iconic for, I think, most cryptozoologists. But she had dubbed it the Beast of Bray Road. And I think once that title was put on it, and that hit the papers really for the first time, it highlighted something about this phenomenon that hadn't been touched on before. So I think Wisconsin, even though it is a hotbed for plenty of different activity, I think a lot of these places are, and until there is something that's iconic, that's kind of put in place that people can relate to, then a lot of this stuff just goes unnoticed. Just north of them, of course, is Michigan, and you've got the Michigan Dogman, who is a similar type of phenomenon. But it doesn't get, I don't think it gets quite as much recognition as the Beast of Bray Road has over the years.
What's the difference between the two, the Beast of Bray Road and the Dogman phenomena?
So this is where it gets kind of interesting, because Michigan Dogman he's a lot older. He was seen, I think the first encounter with him was 1887. And not to say the Beast of Bray Road wasn't around then as well, but the first noted account was 1887 in Wexford County, Michigan. And the same idea, they noticed this bipedal dog wolf-like creature that seems to run on two legs, about the same height, so on and so forth. But this one seemed to have a connection to the river that was there, the Manistee River, I believe, and it seemed to hang around those roadways. There's a lot of roadways and highways and stuff like that in and around the river, and he seemed to be hanging around a lot there. But it seemed to be a little bit more mystical. The idea behind the Michigan Dogman was that it showed up preferably in years that ended, I believe it was that ended with 7, or it was every 10-year cycle that falls on years ending in 7. That's what it was. So it seemed to be a little bit more mystical in nature, where the Beast of Bray Road, people were finding tracks, they're finding footprints, they're finding animal mutilations. So I think one seems to be a little bit more physical in a way than the Michigan Dogman does.
Yeah, I've heard different theories, like like a werewolf type thing. Then it's like a bipedal wolf to it's kind of like Bigfoot, where it's something from like a parallel dimension type thing. I guess that would be kind of the more mystical angle. Like, what are the various theories of what it could be?
Well, that's where it really gets interesting, I think, because the idea for a while that was thrown around, even by Linda Godfrey, was the fact that this was some sort of a wolf that had evolved in the Wisconsin area, because there was a time where in Wisconsin, because it's such a farming cattle community, where the wolves were basically extinguished in Wisconsin. They were considered extinct, and they've slowly started to come back a little bit, but they were considered extinct at one point. But the problem with this theory, and Ken Gerhard, the cryptozoologist and a friend of mine, he works at the San Antonio Zoo, he brought up the fact that the structure, the skeletal structure of a dog, of any canine, really doesn't have the capacity to evolve just to run upright. Its hip structure, everything just can't support that. So I think we can sort of cross off this idea that it was some sort of evolution of a wolf. But the other theory, of course, that goes around is the idea that, do werewolves exist? Is this some like crazy lycanthropy that's happening? It doesn't seem to be. Once the beast, always the beast. He's never been seen in any other form or anything like that. And of course, the key with werewolves is the transformation, right? So there doesn't seem to be any of that transformation period happening. He is what he is. And the interesting part about the beast, and this is, I think key to understanding what it might be, is that when people have tried to set up trail cams to photograph it, what they've noticed is the fact that this whatever it is can't be photographed. They'll set up a trail cam, they'll put down bait like raw meat, anything like that, because it seems to pick up roadkill quite a bit. They'll get the camera on it. They'll come back, the camera will have been triggered, the meat is gone, but what they capture on the camera itself is this strange mist that seems to move in, and then it disappears. The meat's there 1 minute, that's gone the next, and the mist is gone too. So I think that's something to look at. Even though they'll find tracks, it seems to be unable to be photographed. So there might be some sort of spiritual component to what this thing actually is.
Yeah, I was gonna say, because back in 30s, 40s, through the 70s, they didn't really have portable cameras weren't as popular, whereas now everyone has a camera. You figured there every time this thing pops up, there'd be 12 different people posting it on Facebook, but that doesn't seem to happen. So I guess it could either be explained as a reason for it, or it just seems like a massive cop out that, oh yeah, you can't take its picture. That explains it away. I don't know. Um, that's,
Yeah.
that seems like a very strange phenomenon. But then again, I mean, there haven't been any real, quote unquote, real pictures of Bigfoot, anything that could, out and out identify it. So I guess that would definitely lend credence to the theory that it's something paranormal, I guess, for lack of a better word, and not just an animal.
Yeah, I think so, and I think we can trace some of it back to some spiritual origins. There was a theory going around for a little while that it had something to do with a string of occult occurrences that were going on in Wisconsin for a while. There was a almost like a satanic underworld that was kicking around the Wisconsin area, the Walworth County area for quite a number of years, that involved everything from law enforcement to teachers to, people that, you wouldn't really expect. And there was a theory going around for a while that somehow the Beast of Bray Road was some sort of manifestation that happened because of the occult activity that was going on. I don't know if I necessarily subscribe to that. I think it has a strong basis in the First Nations traditions, because we see it around the effigy mounds, the burial grounds, the clients, as I say, that I've been dealing with over the years. It's been directly related to these burial areas, and so I think there's something to that. We see this phenomenon again in a really well-known case now, which is Skinwalker Ranch in Utah, where these things are seen regularly walking along the basin, the edge of the basin, because Skinwalker Ranch is kind of in the basin. And of course, most people know now that Skinwalker Ranch is probably one of the most incredible hotspots for paranormal phenomenon. But the Dogmen are seen there on a regular basis as well, attacking cattle, walking along the ridge, all sorts of stuff like that. So and again, we've got the First Nations tie into Utah with the Navajo and whatnot. So I think there's an attachment there.
Interesting. So there have been obviously lots of trying to explain it away and figure out a way to make it work, like animal misidentification, hoaxes, mass hysteria. Do you think any of those are actual possibilities, or?
Well, I think those at times can be cop outs. Like, we're always going to get those cases of misidentification and stuff like that. But the people that have seen it are, have been very, very clear. There was a case at one point where it was a fellow who was driving along, picking up carcasses. He worked for the city, and his job was to pick up carcasses and roadkill on the side of the road. And he was, needless to say, dealing with animals all the time, and often in wooded areas and things like that, off of these highways. And I remember very clearly this the one encounter that he had, where he had stopped his truck to pick up a small deer carcass. He had put it into the back of his truck on top of an ATV ramp that he used in his job. And he got back in the cab of his truck. He hadn't shut the door on the back of the truck yet, in the truck bed. So, but he gets back in his truck and he's doing the paperwork, and he felt the truck shake. And he paused and, thought maybe, okay, it's the wind, went back to filling out the paperwork, and he felt the truck shake again. And he paused, looked out the back window, and he sees this thing within feet of him in the back of his pickup bed, trying to pick this deer up out of the back of his truck. And he said it terrified. It was just scared the hell out of him. And, the one thing he was very adamant about, because he saw it so close, is that he said, this is not a bear. He said he's like, it was about the same size. But he said that face was wolf. It's a dog. And he said it looked at him and it growled at him, and he was terrified. So he slammed his foot on the gas and took off, and he heard a clank behind him. So he drove for a couple miles to the next crossing, stopped the truck, got out, and the ATV ramp and the deer carcass was long gone. So he paused, and because he needed the ATV ramp to do his job. And so the guy ended up a little while later going back to that area. Ramp was gone, deer was gone, never got his ramp back. But something was strong enough to pull that damn thing off the back of his truck. And it's so, I think, there's always that potential for, things like misidentification. But I think when you've got this amount of people, including an animal control officer who's saying, this is not a bear, this is not what, people are saying it might be, and of course with a very extinct wolf population in Wisconsin, it's really hard to imagine what animal this would be, really. When we start to look at this as a process of elimination, okay, we've got an animal on two legs that runs on two legs. We don't really have any wolves. Wolves can't do that anyway. We don't see bears running on two legs. They can stand up, but they're not going too far. So you start working at process of elimination, and we know this thing is a predator enough to turn around and take apart, livestock. So I think the next level conclusion, after you look at the prints, which are clearly, dog-like, wolf-like, is something we just haven't identified. We haven't seen.
Yeah, I remember just reading about, actually I remember reading, or I heard somewhere about sightings where it was hunter or someone saw the wolf like walking on two legs until they made eye contact, and then it kind of went down and walked like a normal wolf. I found that interesting, but also I noticed on Wikipedia they compared it to, or they said some of the sightings is the head of a wolf, but others said it was the head of a bear, and some others have been compared to Bigfoot. And some of the reasons they try to discredit it is saying, it's a bear with mange and that kind of thing, which seems like a stretch. But there's other creatures too, like you mentioned the Dogman. I know there's lizard men, there's the Bigfoot. Is there any chance that there's kind of like an overlap on what these things are, and it's just different people reporting different things?
Yeah, well, I've wondered that myself over the years, but there seems to be different aspects of it that do overlap, like you say. There's been cases where people have reported the Dogman rock throwing, which is something that we know Bigfoot to do. It's a very ape-like behavior, throw rocks to get people to go away. The one thing that makes I think the Beast of Bray Road stand out a little bit more from the others is the fact that there's been a couple of cases, not very many, where they believe that the Beast of Bray Road has actually uttered words. And it's been very guttural. At one point, a witness had said that they felt like they had heard the word Gadara out of this creature's mouth. And at the time when they'd seen it, it was digging up one of these burial mounds. And Gadara has references to the Bible, and burials and stuff like that. So it's interesting. Like they seem to be a little bit separate. But I think people are always looking for patterns within a lot of these things. I'm not necessarily sure that there's an overlap in this particular case with the Beast of Bray Road, because we don't have any real sightings of anything else in and around that area. I think if we were to have, Sasquatch sightings intermingled or something like that, I get the feeling like we would be seeing more of both, and we don't. It seems to be like this area is Bray Road territory. I don't know.
So it's good. I noticed you mentioned that happens every 10 years, ending in a 7. Other than that, are all the sightings completely random? It seems like if you kind of like with Bigfoot, if you set out with a group of people to go and find it, you never do. It always just happens. Someone just happens to see it when they're not expecting it. They're out and about minding their business. So there's no real way. It's not like hunting a moose where you can track it and where they live. It just seems like you're trying to get hit by lightning on purpose. It's just the odds of it happening are so slim.
Yeah, well, Beast of Bray Road specifically, I think it's really hard. Like the last sighting for them was in last July. When he was seen in a vicinity of, I think it was Lyons or something like that, vicinity of Walworth County. But even Sasquatch is a lot easier to track, because typically, especially in Canada and whatnot, the Sasquatch sightings will follow the elk migration. And when you can see when you layer on top of the sightings, with where the elk are going, you can see a pattern start to emerge, where they typically will follow the elk because it's hunting ground. Even things like the Yeti and animals like that, they're pretty sure that what happens with the Yeti is that they typically stay at higher elevations and then come down to hunt during certain time periods or temperature drops in the season and stuff like that. So I think even they are a little bit easier to pin down than the Beast of Bray Road. There doesn't seem to be, at least that I've noticed, any semblance of pattern that has arisen over the years, other than the fact that if you're in and around some of these mounds, you might be considered a threat. So maybe it's strictly a territorial thing.
Has there ever been any sightings in places? I mean, you said the wolves are almost extinct in Wisconsin, but they did live there. Has there ever been any in places where wolves have no business being, Arctic or the, middle of the desert or the, Amazon, anything like that? Or they tend to be around places where wolves naturally live?
Well, I mean, there has been, I think, over the years some in weird places. Like as I said, I think Bray Road's probably one of the most unique because we do know that those areas to be extinct. But even certain areas of Canada, I mean, like we here in Alberta, I mean, in areas where they've been seen, I mean, we don't have wolves in those areas. Like in and around the client's property that I'm working right now, I mean, there's no wolves in that area. There hasn't been for God knows how long. So I mean, it does happen. Certain highways and roads and stuff like that we have, here in Canada that they're noted on, where it doesn't make sense. But interestingly enough, the prairie areas seem to be hot spots for a lot of these things. We look over in France, for example, go way back to the Beast of Gévaudan, which was probably one of the first encounters with something like this. And in that case, the creature ended up killing quite a number of people. It was really highly aggressive, and there, it shouldn't have been there either. So, it seems to show up every once in a while in places that quite doesn't really make any sense. And but again, some of these locations, at least in the West, I'm not sure about there, but seems to be have some Aboriginal ties. So. That seems to be a prevalent pattern with them.
Do you have any more questions, Elizabeth?
I do not. This is all very fascinating, though.
I was going to ask, I remember hearing somewhere, and I can't remember if I'm even remembering the story correctly, but I remember hearing something about this, I don't know if it was a Beast of Bray Road or some sort of dogman or wolf creature actually coming into someone's house. Have you heard anything about that?
I haven't heard of them coming into people's houses. I had the client that I'm working with right now. She had a pretty close encounter with one climbing her house, which was pretty unnerving. She'd come. They had been hearing something outside of the bedroom window. Their bedroom is on the second floor, and they'd been hearing something outside their bedroom window for a few nights. Of course, not thinking it was something like this. But they had come home the one night and they looked up on their roof because you could see their roof from their driveway. And what's standing up on the roof is one of these dogmen. And they realized at that point, they were wondering if it was trying to get in the house or it was curious enough to get in the house. They've seen it a number of times climbing their shop. They've got a shop that's beside the house that's quite tall. They've seen it climb the house. It got in the back of her husband's pickup truck at one point in the morning. So there's been some definite close encounters, but I haven't heard directly of any actually getting in, thankfully.
Yes, very thankfully.
They seem to be very cheeky. They're just, I'm just gonna hang out here on your roof, and as soon as you see me, I'm gonna be acting all normal, very cheeky creatures.
Yeah, and curious, really curious. I think they don't seem to really like people too much, but they're not afraid of them either. Very, very bold. And that's the one thing that everybody that's encountered them has said is that they look them right in the eye. They're not intimidated at all. Even as I say, my clients, when he had he had gone out to his truck the one morning, and it was standing in the back of his pickup truck, just looking in the windows of the truck. And when it saw him, it had no qualms about looking him right in the eye, and it growled at him, and he turned around and went right back into the house.
Yeah. Good call.
I'm out. I'm not having this argument with you. You take the truck. Just take it.
Truck's yours.
It's yours, man. I'm done. But yeah, and so needless to say, he was a little late getting into work that day. But yeah, so they don't seem to have any fear about people at all.
Well, what is their level of intelligence? Is it similar to a wolf, or do they have some sort of heightened intelligence, more like a human?
That's a really good question. There's been some people that have felt that there's almost like a telepathic connection with them when they've seen them. They felt like there's a knowing in their face, in their eyes. There's been a lot of talk that no, these aren't just animals running around, that there's a knowledge and knowing. They know why they're there. They're watching. There's been a number of sightings of people driving down Bray Road, and where it will run beside their car, will run parallel to their car, and the driver or whatever will look over, and it will look dead at the person, and they feel like, no, this thing is watching me with a semblance of smarts that they haven't felt in things like dogs or cats or anything like that. So even though we see the behavior of these as very primal, there's no outward expression of extreme intelligence. I don't think there's ever been a report of them using tools, or even something as simple as play. I don't think I've ever heard of a report of that either. So it's really hard to know, because people's impression is that they're really smart. They've got a really high IQ, where with their behavior, it seems to be very, very dog-like and animalistic.
What color are they? Like black, brown?
Grays, apparently. People have reported them being grays, dark grays, with almost like a bristly type fur. I think that's where a lot of the idea that, oh no, it's a bear with mange, or it's something like that, has come from. It's funny, because there's a little bit of a crossover with some of the Western accounts of the Wendigo as well, also a First Nations creature, where some reports of those have been seen as this upright canid, but thin, emaciated, long arms, long legs, very, very gaunt, not the bulk like the Beast of Bray Road has, but the same kind of sort of mangy, patchy fur that can be reported with the Beast of Bray Road. So it's kind of interesting that there might be a little bit of an overlap there. I don't know, I don't know how true that would be, but needless to say, different cases. But it's interesting that description comes up again and again. When we look back in history, we look at even some of the Egyptian gods, stuff like that. These dog-headed men, or dog-headed creatures, spiritual creatures that move around and throughout our experience. Yeah, that the idea of this upright canid, I don't think is new by any means.
Elizabeth, do you have any final questions or comments?
No, I don't, but that's all really cool.
They're neat. Like, it's such a neat phenomenon, and I think it's so easy at the beginning to kind of just dismiss it, like, oh, this is crazy, but there is such a rich history with these, and the ones that they've researched and are looking at and keep documenting. I mean, even the Beast of Bray Road, he's even got his own festival every year. Every year in Wisconsin, Elkhorn holds this festival, and one of the fellows, one of the farmers, a guy by the name of Lee Hampel, he ends up doing a hayride down Bray Road. He's one of the farmers there, who has seen this thing so frequently, because the damn thing keeps eating his cattle. So he's got trail cams up constantly, and it's really interesting to hear his stories, because he's come so close to this thing so many times. And during the festival, he takes people from spot to spot to spot to tell the stories about where he's seen this thing. So it's really interesting. I would love to go one day. I would love to go.
Yeah, well, we'll do a road trip.
Yeah.
Road trip. It would be super cool. And Chad Lewis is one of the speakers there as well.
Oh, nice.
Oh, there you go.
Cool. All right, well, we're almost out of time here, so let's wrap it up. That was a very interesting conversation, and makes me want to watch the movie based on the Beast of Bray Road. I'm not sure how good it's going to be, but
Definitely check out the documentary. There's a documentary by Seth Breedlove called The Bray Road Beast, and it's amazing. I can highly recommend that one.
I will do that. Great. Okay. Well, Morgan, thanks again. Well, I'm sure we'll see you very soon. And
Absolutely.
talk to you guys
Hey,
later.
thanks, Morgan.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks for listening to the Paranormal Phenomena Podcast. See you next time.